Let me ask you something. Have you noticed that every anime has that one moment where everyone is screaming, the villain is smiling way too confidently, the hero is getting absolutely demolished, and then somebody says, "Don't do it," and you already know what happens next? The hero looks up like, "Yeah, about that," and then immediately does the exact thing everyone told them not to do. Boom! Yeah, I mean, anime characters hear the words forbidden power and somehow translate it in a limited time offer, and every single time we sit there thinking, this is either gonna be the coolest thing I've ever seen, or this person is about to make the worst life decision imaginable. Usually it's both.
Both is good.
See, that's what makes forbidden powers so much fun. Take Naruto for example. The 8 gates are probably one of the cleanest examples of this whole idea. Your body naturally limits how much power it can use, but those chakra gates are basically safety locks. Open one, and you unlock more of your body's real strength. Open another, and even more comes out. Sounds amazing, right? Well, there's the catch. Every gate also damages your body more and more because your body was never supposed to operate like that in the first place. Then comes the 8th gate. Even the name tells you everything you need to know. The Gate of Death. It's located in the heart, your blood literally begins evaporating, your heart is pumping at maximum speed, and your power jumps to a level that's around 100 times greater. That's not a technique anymore, that's your body basically looking at itself and saying, well, we're done after this anyway. And when Might Guy uses it, that's exactly what makes the moment incredible. He isn't unlocking hidden potential because destiny chose him. He's sacrificing everything he has. He only survives because Naruto steps in. Even then, Guy spends the rest of his life unable to walk without assistance. That's the story refusing to pretend the cost never existed. Now compare that with his father, Might Dewey. Same technique, same sacrifice. The difference? There was no Naruto waiting around to save him. That's what really drives the point home. Forbidden power doesn't promise survival, it promises results, maybe. And then there's Rock Lee. Poor guy enters a world where everyone is throwing around crazy ninjutsu and impossible bloodline abilities while he's sitting there thinking, so, I punch really hard. The 8 gates becomes his answer. They're not inherited through some special clan ability, they're earned through training and a body willing to break itself. That's what makes them feel different from all the shortcuts surrounding them. Bleach handles this idea in a completely different way. Ichigo Kurosaki isn't dealing with one forbidden source of power. He's trying to balance several different parts of himself that constantly threaten to override each other. Hollow, Quincy, and Soul Reaper powers. It's less like holding one weapon and more like trying to stop 3 different roommates from setting the apartment on fire. Then you have Kenpachi, who somehow manages to make barely controlled power look like a lifestyle choice. Most people gradually unlock Bankai. Kenpachi almost gets dragged into using it because controlling himself has never exactly been his strongest hobby. And then there's Aizen. His fusion with the Hogyoku almost feels backwards compared to everyone else. Most forbidden powers demand sacrifice first. Aizen wants unlimited power without paying anything himself. That's exactly why the story treats him so differently. It's not just the strength, it's the fact that he wants the reward without accepting any personal cost. Now, let's jump into Fullmetal Alchemist, because if there's one series that absolutely refuses to let anyone forget the consequences, it's this one. Human transmutation isn't mysterious. Nobody can say they weren't warned. The law of equivalent exchange is explained before Edward and Alphonse ever attempt it. The rules are sitting right there, but the brothers ignore them anyway. Edward loses his leg, then sacrifices an arm just to recover Alphonse's soul. Alphonse loses his entire body. What makes this horrifying isn't randomness. The punishment is precise. Alchemy basically says, here's exactly what your attempt was missing, and you'll be paying with yourself. Even characters like Shu Tucker and Father don't escape that system. They simply figure out ways to make other people pay instead. Same rules, different victims. Black Clover follows a similar structure, but with magic instead of alchemy. Asta's anti-magic doesn't simply appear. It comes through a contract with the devil Liba. Nacht Faust pushes things even further by making multiple devil contracts, something treated inside the Clover Kingdom as being much closer to a cult malpractice than some exciting new spell. The interesting part is that these powers aren't automatically evil. They're forbidden because every contract gives away a piece of your own autonomy. You're entering an agreement where something stronger than you has a seat at the table. And speaking of sharing your body with something you shouldn't, welcome to Jujutsu Kaisen. Honestly, Yuji Itadori deserves some kind of award for making the fastest terrible decision in anime history. Sorcerers spend their lives destroying Ryomen Sukuna's fingers. Yuji looks at one and basically says, you know what, I'm gonna eat that. Immediately his body becomes the home of the King of Curses himself. That's forbidden from the very beginning. The danger isn't just using Sukuna's power, it's living every day knowing someone else is sharing the apartment. But if we're talking about powers that truly come with no hidden discounts, we have to talk about Megumi and Mahoraga. The 10 Shadows technique allows its user to control up to 10 Shikigami. Sounds great until you reach Mahoraga. Every previous user who tried to tame it ended up dead. At that point, summoning Mahoraga isn't really a battle strategy. It's basically pressing the emergency button labeled "This will probably kill me." When Megumi finally summons it against Haruta Shigemo, he's already severely injured and completely out of options. The result arrives exactly as advertised. Mahoraga is so overwhelmingly powerful that one backhand nearly kills Megumi immediately and leaves him in suspended animation. The only reason he survives is because Sukuna intervenes, but definitely not out of kindness. I actually respect this scene because the story never tries to cheat. No secret loophole, no sudden miracle. The forbidden power acts exactly like everyone warned it would. Then there's Geitu, whose story flips everything around. Instead of a technique punishing him directly, he keeps collecting cursed spirits while treating moral boundaries like tiny speed bumps. Eventually, the consequences arrive anyway, just not in the way he expected. Now, do you notice something? None of these powers are actually forbidden because they're evil. They're forbidden because every single power demands a huge price. Since we are talking about the price, Attack on Titan takes forbidden power and somehow makes it everyone's problem instead of just one person's. Eren Yeager's founding Titan isn't terrifying because it destroys his own body. It's terrifying because once the rumbling begins, the cost spreads across an entire continent. Suddenly, forbidden power isn't about surviving one fight anymore. It's about carrying the weight of history itself. The story constantly reminds us this wasn't something meant to be passed around casually. Zeike Yeager's royal blood becomes necessary for certain Titan abilities. Grisha steals the founding Titan in the first place. Everything surrounding it feels like handling something humanity was never supposed to control. Even Chainsaw Man brings things back down to a much more personal scale. Aki's devil contracts don't announce their cost with giant explosions. They quietly take years off his lifespan, little by little, off-screen, until eventually you realize the bill has been accumulating the entire time. Denji's situation isn't really about becoming stronger for its own sake either. His fusion with the Chainsaw Devil raises a much bigger question about what he's willing to become in order to protect the small number of people he still has. Then we reach Berserk. The Berserker armor gives Guts incredible strength, but it asks for something equally important in return. The stronger he becomes, the more he risks losing his own mind. The armor exists, so the story can keep asking one uncomfortable question: how much of yourself are you willing to give away if it means you can keep fighting? And then Griffith's transformation into Femto during the eclipse answers the opposite question entirely. Instead of sacrificing himself, he sacrifices everyone else. That's what separates him. The price is still paid, it's just paid by somebody who never agreed to it. So, when you look at all these series together, something really interesting starts to appear. Forbidden powers aren't there because bigger explosions look cool. Okay, they do look cool. Let's not pretend they don't. But that's never their real purpose. Every one of these moments is secretly asking the exact same question. What are you actually willing to pay? Might Guy answers with his own body. Edward and Alphonse answer with parts of themselves. Asta signs contracts. Yuji shares his body. Megumi risks certain death. Eren unleashes a power that changes the fate of countless people. Guts risks losing his own mind. Griffith chooses everyone else as the payment. That's why these moments never feel like ordinary power-ups. They're decisions disguised as transformations. And honestly, that's probably why we remember them years later. We don't just remember how powerful the characters became, we remember what it cost them to get there. But why are forbidden powers so fascinating? Well, in real life, we all eventually face moments where greater success requires paying a price. It's a classical universal human dilemma. These fantasy powers turn that abstract idea into something literal. And that's why these stories stay with us. Not because any of us will unlock the 8 gates, or summon Mahoraga, or make a deal with a devil. Well, hopefully not. But because sooner or later, everyone has to decide what they're willing to sacrifice for something they want. So anime shows us that it's never just about becoming stronger, it's about discovering whether winning the fight is worth turning into a completely different person. So, which forbidden power do you think had the biggest cost? What would you be willing to sacrifice? Did I miss one that deserves a spot on this list? Let me know in the comments.